It's my honor, privilege, and great joy to introduce our speaker today. Reverend Robin M. Moore, and she would say, just call me Robin, became a religious science minister in June of 2018 and was ordained in August 2024. She has a BA in psychology and an MA in organizational psychology. Robin is also an entrepreneur and serves on the board of directors of Global Religious Science Ministries, or GRSM. In 2014, Robin was blessed with an opportunity for healing. It created a whole new opportunity for her to live life fully. Draw on her spiritual toolbox and rewrite the way to move through dis-ease and life. This gift of healing transformed every facet of her life and living. Robin lives life as an expression of wholeness, joy, gratitude, and trust. And coming to the mic here in the front, please join me in welcoming the Reverend Robin Moore.
Good morning, good morning, good morning. And I am so excited to be here. Do I need to be closer?
Nope, I need to turn it off.
I am so excited to be here, to be able to share a message with you guys this morning. I mean, ladies and gentlemen, because everybody's not a guy. And the title that I've the title of my talk for this morning is Having the Faith of God. Now, for me, we've often heard, okay, give me 2 seconds. It's coming too fast. We have often heard having faith in God. I recently, a few years ago, did a study with Jim Rosemergy, who's a Unity minister, but one of the questions was, how about having the faith of God as opposed to having faith in God? And for me, it changed the course of how I interact with God. And having the faith of God means to me, Robin, that I'm drawing from the presence and power of God that is within me. For we are created in the image and after the likeness of God, and we are God's perfection. And can I operate from that place? Can I operate from the perfection of God that I am? And can I trust that all is well? And, you know, as I thought about this subject all week, it kept coming to 3 stories, 3 events in my life where I really had to have the faith of God. And what was really interesting is that the first story, or the first part of it, was back in 2014. In 2014, I was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. And what was interesting about that whole process was that when the doctor told me that I was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, I kept saying, okay. And he was like, he thought maybe I didn't understand. So he told me again, and I'm like, okay. And my mother was with me, and she was like, do you not understand what they're telling you? I'm like, look, something happened before I went to the hospital that day. There are, around my house, I have a lot of spiritual books. And that morning, I went to a book. It's called Stake Your Claim. And I opened the book. I said, give me a message, give me a word. And the word was, all things are not as they appear. And so when I was told that I had this diagnosis, one of my teachers said to me, it's not a prognosis, it's just a diagnosis. And in that moment, I had to choose. And in choosing, I think the power of choice is so important, because in order to have faith in God, you got to choose. Because we live in this world as human beings, but we are spiritual beings. And we can get conformed to this world, or we can live our lives as spiritual beings. And in that moment, I used my power of choice. And no, I didn't know how it was going to turn out, but I knew that I was going to this was the opportunity. You know, I'd been going to Unity churches for over 25 years, and this was the opportunity to put the pedal to the road and to really find out if I really believed what I've been saying all these years. And that power, that decision to choose to stand in God and let it play out whatever way it needed to. Yeah, I would have liked to survive, which I have, but in the moment, I didn't know. And I was grateful for lots of things, but there was a lot of choices made in the beginning. You know, I went to church that Sunday, and my minister was talking about nonviolent communication. And I realized that a lot of the language around cancer was not positive. It was kind of violent. And I decided that my team, anyone around me, was going to talk in a language of love, a language of transformation. My 3 words were transform, transcend, transmute. And we blessed and we prayed over everything. The power of prayer is so powerful. But all of these were choices that I made. And I enrolled people to make the same choice with me. And we stood as a community, my tribe, so to speak. And what I learned in that moment was that I could trust God. Because I trusted what I had been taught, everything that I had learned, everything that was in my spiritual toolbox. I pulled everything, every and anything that was in that box, I pulled it in there, and I was like, okay, Lord, let's do this. You know, and there were many modalities that were part of the process. Again, choosing and trusting. Because there was a lot of stuff I didn't know. I never heard anything about Reiki. But Reiki played a part in this healing. And meditation and prayer. And, you know, I stand here today totally healed. And I know that it was because of the choices and the decisions that I made and giving it all to God. Giving it all to God because I knew a couple of things, that God doesn't make junk. God operates in perfection. And I was going to stand in that perfection. And whatever way it turned out, because I asked for healing more than cure. I was asked that question by another minister. She said, Robin, do you want healing? Do you want cure? I said, I'd like to have both. But if I could choose one, I'd choose healing, because healing is dimensional. It goes beyond the surface. And when we have the faith of God, there's things that are going on in the invisible that we have no idea. God is greater. And can we stand in that greatness and know that, yeah, where we stand, it might look a little scary. It might be uncomfortable. But we know that we're being supported and nurtured and loved by this presence. And it's always available, it's ever present. There's not a place that we can be that God is not. And even the places that we take ourselves to, God is there. God is always, always, always present with us. And so grateful for that. And so, you know, that's choice. But then came trust. The second story. I was at St. Mary's Hospital. My mother had been admitted to the hospital. I'd been in the hospital all day. And I was leaving the hospital, and I forgot that I don't do steps. And so I was walking down the steps, and they have like these marble steps, and I fell, and I hit this part of my forehead on the landing. And I walked away, no problem. We got COVID. About 4 weeks later, I was in the hospital. And what was interesting is that the doctor was telling me all these things that were wrong with me, and I'm thinking, really, seriously? Where did this come from? I mean, I operate in the fact that this body operates in sheer perfection. And I go to the hospital, and they tell me this. I said, can you find anything else wrong? But what happened was, they told me one diagnosis that scared the crap out of me. And they said, we think you might have had a mini stroke. And the doctor walked away, never said anything else. And I'm thinking, oh my God, what does that look like? I didn't even know I had one. How could you have one and not know you had one? And what I didn't realize, and which I am grateful for, I didn't realize all the side effects that come along with that. And then one of them is anxiety. I had never been anxious. I had never really known what fear was. until that moment. And in that moment, I was using all my tools in my toolbox and nothing was working. Absolutely nothing was working. And I'm like, okay, God, what am I doing wrong? What am I not doing? And the message was, reach out. So I got on the phone. I called the people that I knew that I could count on to pray with me, to stand in the gap for me when I couldn't stand for myself. And God always has resources for us if we're willing to reach out. No one said we had to do this alone. Our spiritual journey is, yes, our own. But when we can't do it ourselves, we have a community. Reach out to them. And in that moment, because I was beside myself, I had prayed for people and done healing work, and I could not do it for myself. And I was like, oh my gosh. And so I just said to myself, and I had to get past my own image, too. Asking for help. How many of us have a problem with that? God wants us to ask for help when we need it. I asked God first, and God told me what to do. God told me, reach out to your peers, reach out to the people. And let me tell you, they came. They came, they prayed, they stood in the gap for me. And in this process of moving through this diagnosis, and the anxiety was incredible. And I kept saying to myself, God, take this from me. I said, because I didn't know what, I had never, ever been that anxious, that afraid. And I was like, am I learning this so that I can appreciate the people that are going to come to me, that are going to have this feeling, and be able to show them and to guide them how to stand in God's presence, even in the midst of this. Because even though I could not feel it, I trusted the presence of God. I trusted what I knew about God, because what was really interesting as the progression went on was that I had to relearn what I knew about God. It was like even now, things will come up and I'm like, oh yeah, I didn't know that, didn't I? But the thing is, is that when we're leaning into God for whatever it is that we need, strength, love, peace, harmony, it's there, because it's all there. And can we stand in that place even when you don't feel it? Because that was what happened to me. I wasn't feeling God like I did before. But I knew that I could trust the teachings because I had had that experience with cancer. And I knew that God didn't feel me then. God's not going to feel me now. And to be able to trust what I can't see and what I can't feel, what is faith? Evidence of things that are unseen. So trusting in the invisible, for me, was really, I get these opportunities, because I call them all opportunities, so that I can further develop my relationship with God and heighten my spiritual awareness. And I'm willing to take these opportunities because I look at what people would call a challenge, I call them opportunities, because it's an opportunity for me to go deeper, to reach out, to know God in a more intimate and personal way. And when we're going to operate from the faith of God, we have to, because God gave us choice, we get to have that intimate relationship with God. No one can do it for us. We have to do it for ourselves. And so it's being willing to step into whatever's before us. I tell my students all the time, whatever's before us is for us. It's either to learn, to grow, unfold, or to share. We are here for each other. And so as I go on my journey, I know that there are going to be people that are going to come into my life that I'm going to be able to bless because of the journey that I've been on. I don't think that everything is solely for me, especially the diagnosis of cancer. I knew when I was diagnosed, that was not for me. It was for the people that I was going to meet over the years and help them to process in a way that's more positive, more enlightening, more trusting of God. And yeah, we have to listen to diagnosis, but it's only a collection of facts. It's not necessarily the truth. It's just what they decided is the truth. And so we get to decide what we're going to believe about that. And so it's just so important. And the last one that I want to share is about when my mother passed away back in December 2023. And my mom got really, really, really sick. And I remember thinking when she was sick, because she got really, really sick, and then she got really, really better. And my brother and I and her were able to make some decisions and some choices about how and if she was going to transition. Because we decided, the three of us, that we were going to turn this whole process over to God. My mother said, let God and me decide. And so my brother and I were willing to let go and to surrender to God the thing that was most precious to me, which was my mom. And what I realized, and I didn't realize in the moment, it wasn't until after she transitioned that I realized that, you know, that verse where it says, footprints in the sand, it's not me, you know, God was carrying me. It wasn't until after she passed that I realized that God carried me through that whole experience. I knew exactly what to do, when to do, how to do it, how to support her, how to be with the doctors. And it was such a beautiful experience, more after than during, because I realized that God was carrying me and my brother and my mother. And because we surrendered and we let go, we gave it to God. We gave my mother her illness, her life, her future, and all the decisions we made were, if this is God's will, then it's God's will. But we were not gonna try to keep her here if she wasn't supposed to be here. And I remember the night before my mother passed away or transitioned, I was sitting by the bed and I was looking, and they were giving her, you know, they were giving her palliative care, and they were giving her, you know, the narcotics. And I sat there and I'm like, my mother was terrified of narcotics. I said, well, here we are giving her narcotics. Was this for my brother and I, or was this for her? My brother came in about 6 o'clock that morning, and he said to me, Robin, are we doing this for us, or are we doing this for her? And in that moment, my brother and I knew what we needed to do, because my mother was terrified of narcotics, and here we are doing palliative care, and we give. And so we told them that morning that we were going to take her off of everything and let God and her decide what her next steps were. And, you know, there was an ease in that, because we really had turned it over to God, that we surrendered to the will of my mom and God, because that was between her and God. That was between her and God. That wasn't between my brother and I and her. We made a decision as a family to turn it over to God, but we left those two, that last decision, between her and God. And when I talk about having faith, having that faith in God, it's trusting God beyond limits. You know, because God trusts us. God gave us choice. God gave us free will. God gave us the opportunity to be in relationship with him or not. Nothing is forced upon us. And so we get to choose, we get to trust, and we get to surrender and let go. Because sometimes we need to move out of God's way. Because we've got it, you know, sometimes I don't know about y'all, but I know for me, I think I've got it all figured out. And no, God says, wait a minute, excuse me. And then I have to take a step back, because, you know, life is an adventure. It is a journey in self-discovery. I love where that one of your principles says a progression of that we're responsible for our growth. You know, no one can do it for us. I think that is so exciting, because everyone's relationship with God is different, because everyone is different. God made us different. And so I'm just so grateful for this opportunity to share my story of my faith of God. And, you know, the thing is, the difference between having faith in God and having faith of God for me is that it comes from within. And we know that Spirit is all around us, but Spirit definitely is within us. And I thank you, and I thank you, and I thank you.
We
And
thank
so,
you too.
so it is.